I believe in miracles, number 264, take one.
I believe in miracles.
He touched me, he touched me, he touched me, he touched me.
That was the voice of Kathryn Kuhlman, whose message is a source of belief and hope to countless thousands across the nation. Through a ministry on the public platform, by radio, the printed page, and through the outreach of television. Again today, Miss Kuhlman introduces guests who dramatically confirm the reality of divine power in daily life. Now, Kathryn Kuhlman.
You can say it for me if you want to, because you know exactly what I'm going to say. I believe in miracles, and I never believed in miracles more than I do today. Also remember, the reason that I believe in miracles is because I believe in God. Well, young Simen, come here, honey. Oh, bless your heart. Look at that face, just look at that face. Honey, those freckles are beautiful. Miss Kuhlman just loves those freckles. You see, because when Miss Kuhlman was a little girl, she had freckles too. You just have them on your nose and over here. And Miss Kuhlman had freckles on her nose and here, all over her face. And Miss Kuhlman's mama would say, Kathryn, come in the house, put on your bonnet. And you know what Miss Kuhlman had to wear when she was a little girl? A bonnet. Aren't you glad your mama doesn't make you wear a bonnet?
Yes.
Wouldn't you look funny with a bonnet on?
Yeah.
Oh, young Simen, I think you're wonderful. You know that I think you're wonderful. And I want you to know, young Simen wants you to know, that he too believes in miracles. And in a few minutes, you'll understand why young Simen de Vries believes in miracles. But right now, it's Dino at the piano. and Jimmy McDonald.
The name of Jesus is so sweet. I love its music to repeat. It makes my joys full and complete. Oh, praise the name of Jesus. Jesus. Oh, how sweet the name. Jesus. How sweet the name that I love so well. Oh, let its praises ever swell. Oh, praise the name of Jesus. Jesus, oh, how sweet the name. Jesus, every day the same.
Well, young Simen, with the beautiful freckles on his nose and the little bit of hair that sticks up, understand that's the sign of a real American boy. Simen, I think you're a honey. You know, I just think you're wonderful. I'm so glad you brought your daddy along. Oh, I'm so glad. Mr. Vries, you were born in Holland, right?
That is correct. That is right.
The very first time that I met you was, I stood in the Shrine Auditorium with the newspapers, and some scientists were trying to analyze these healings, and I didn't know you were a scientist. And I said, is the man here, the daddy here, the little boy who was so wonderfully healed at home? And when you came to the stage of the Shrine Auditorium, I said to you, sir, because I'd never met you before, and what do you do? And you'll never know how amazed I was when you said, I am a scientist. And no scientist can analyze the power of God.
It is impossible.
That is the truth. Well, first of all, not from the standpoint of a scientist, but just as a father, how did you feel when the doctors told you that your son had a disease for which there's no cure?
Well, we felt just absolutely terrible. It was as if someone pulled a rug from under us.
Ah.
We just lost everything. I don't think that if I would have been sick or my wife would have been ill, maybe we would have been able to take it. But to have one of your children contract a disease that there is absolutely no hope for.
What did the doctor say it was?
And they said it was scleroderma. And this was determined after many tests, many biopsies. And it is a rare disease.
So there was no possibility of it being a wrong diagnosis?
There was absolutely no mistake. They did biopsies on the muscles and on the bones, on the liver, on the blood, on just about every part of the body, and everything pointed to this disease. Now, this disease is in a family of the collagen diseases. It's a disease that takes place in the protein tissues of the body. We didn't know about this at all. And this is what the doctors explained to us.
Is it unusual for it to be in the body of a young person?
It is.
So
The
young?
disease itself is very rare, so it makes it very unusual for a child to have this disease, yes. And we always had so much faith in man. We had a tremendous faith in doctors. And all of a sudden, here we were. No one could help us. No one could help us. We were just absolutely helpless. There was not enough money in the world that could buy our son's health. And we were terrified. And we just didn't know where to turn. Until one day, my wife, she was sitting in the kitchen and just thinking, going over the situation again, and praying out loud, not on her knees, just sitting on a chair by the table. And she said, if there is a God, I want to know him.
Just that simple.
That's all. And that's all it took for God to move right in. She received an answer immediately. You know, in Revelation 3, verse 20, the scripture says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hear my voice and open that door, I will come in and sup with him and he with me. And Adi just asked him to come in. And all of a sudden, she knew the answer. And she was very excited. And the answer was God could help us.
You had never thought of turning to him prior to that?
Well,
You never thought of him performing a miracle, you being a man of science?
We didn't think of God performing miracles today. You see, we had some knowledge of the Bible, but we didn't realize that God still is the same. And so Adi was very excited, so she called me at work and she said, you know what? I've got good news. And this is what we needed. It was good news. The Bible, the New Testament, the gospel is good news.
You mean after she got it from her knees right there in her own home?
That is right. So she called me at work. And she says, I have good news. That's all she said. So it was almost lunchtime, so I rushed home for lunch. And as I came in, I said, what is it? Because we had so much bad news. I mean, with the disease and just everything went wrong. And as I walked in, she says, you know what? And of course, she didn't know how I would react on this because we were married for 13 years, and yet we didn't know each other in this way. She did not know how I would react on her telling me God can help us. And so she said, God can help us. And as he said this, I knew that he could help us. And so then we thought we would give God a little hand.
We're all so human, aren't
That is
we?
right. So we thought maybe we should go ahead and go to Oral Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
And we contacted Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we tried to get an appointment. We contacted an airline to fly down there, and nothing worked out. Nothing worked out. The appointment didn't work out, and the airplane reservations didn't work out, and somehow it just didn't fit. So then one day, it was a Sunday, all of a sudden in our bedroom, I saw a book, and the book is called I Believe in Miracles.
How did it get there?
Well, it had been there for a long time, but I never saw it, really. Before that, it was in the back of the car for quite some time. In fact, my wife's mother gave it to us.
But you weren't interested then.
We were not interested. My wife had picked it up, and she didn't read it. And I had seen it, and yet it hadn't clicked. So this Sunday, I was very eager to find out about miracles. And I picked up this book, and I didn't want to waste any time, so I didn't start in the front. I didn't start in the back, but I started in the middle. And I started reading about a story about a young boy, and Eugene is his name.
Yes.
And he was healed instantly, miraculously. And this really spoke to me. It made me very happy. I just had a joy. And then it was approximately 10:30 on a Sunday evening, as I had read this story, and I had told my wife about it, and all of a sudden I just had to turn the television on. And mind you, I had never heard of Kathryn Kuhlman. No one had ever told us about your minister. So I turned the television set on, and it was on channel 13.
I don't believe those things just happen, do you?
I know they don't just happen.
That's the truth.
And so I turned the television on, and who was on? Kathryn Kuhlman. And guess who was the guest?
The same one whose story you read in the book I Believe in Miracles.
Eugene, that is right. And this was in June of 1969. In June of 1969. So then the announcer said that you would be in the Shrine Auditorium the following month, July the 17th of 1969.
And you were right there.
And we were right there. We came early.
Did you like it?
It was beautiful. It was beautiful.
Was it something different than what you had expected?
We had never been in a service like that before, but I came critical because I wanted to analyze this. I wanted to really find out. We had never been in a service like this before, so we were very cautious. And as we were sitting in the service, one person came up, and we thought, well, this man is fainting or something, you know? And then I thought, well, no, it can't be, because the following one came up, and the same wonderful thing happened. So then I thought, well, maybe it's hypnotism. And from then on, no, it couldn't be hypnotism. Nobody brought him back out. And so then I thought, well, maybe it's psychosomatic.
There you sat there as
And I just-
scientists
that is
trying
right.
to
That is
analyze
right.
it.
So then finally, I just had to go and find out. I thought, well, if this is of God, I'm going to find out. So I went up front, and I met you, and you prayed over Simen. And since then, God became more real to me personally.
So your spiritual experience really
That is right. That is right.
was
So-
a great miracle to you.
That was
You'd
a great
never
miracle.
had a spiritual experience like that before.
Never. And so I became very hungry to read the scriptures. The Bible became very real. God is real. He is alive. And so as I started reading in the scriptures and in the Gospels, the words just jumped off the pages and became real in me, alive. And this was a joy.
Sure.
Simen was not healed. We couldn't understand this. We thought that, we thought it was going to be his day that day. Nothing happened. But, the Lord found us.
He
found us.
never lets us down.
That is right.
That's one thing we can depend on. And the amazing thing is that when Simen was healed, he was healed at home, and you and your wife were in the Shrine Auditorium. That to me is such a beautiful evidence of his power, because that takes Kathryn Kuhlman out of it entirely.
That is right.
See, I have nothing to do with these healings. And the fact that he was healed at home, you and your wife in the Shrine Auditorium, did you come praying for him that Sunday?
Yes, we did. We felt very bad that particular day. This was in February of 1970. But before that, I want to take you back yet, if I may, to December. December was a critical period because the doctor had decided that there might be a drug, a new experimental drug that they didn't know the outcome of, but they might want to try this on Simen. So we prayed that this would not be necessary because the side effects were not very favorable, and they were not at all sure that this drug would happen. So we just simply prayed that the Lord would just show something to the doctors that he did not have to take this drug. And sure enough, in December, when Simen went for his visit to the doctor, there were 3 doctors there, and all 3 of them agreed that there was some improvement. And to us, this was a sign. And so we knew, in fact, my wife would go around and tell some intimate friends that the Lord would heal Simen. So in February, Simen was very ill that day. He was in pain. He would have spasms in his muscles, in his arms and in his legs, very similar to when a person, has a spasm in his leg and his toe stands up. And this is very painful. And so he had to stay home. And we came to the meeting, and we said, well, if it be your will, Lord, take him. But if it is your will, then go ahead and heal him. Not our will, but your will be done. And when we came home, as we left, he was in pain. And as we came home, he was playing ball at home. And he hasn't had any pain since. None.
Mr. DeVries, you are telling me that when you got to the place where you became so yielded to the will of God that you were willing to say either heal him or take him.
That is right. That is correct. That is correct.
It was then that God heard your prayer.
That is right.
And your son was not healed in the shrine.
No, he was at home.
Well, honey, and you're that young man that your daddy's been talking about all this time. You mean to tell me, honey, that when your daddy and mama got home from the Shrine Auditorium, you were playing ball?
Yes.
Were you shocked?
We couldn't believe it at first. We just had to believe it. And we were just in awe.
And when you left him at home, he was in such intense pain.
That is right.
I guess these spasms are no one knows the pain.
That is right. He would have drugs to kill the pain, but this would just not be enough.
And tell again, what did your son have? What was it diagnosed as?
The name of the disease is scleroderma.
And there is no cure for it.
Absolutely none. There's no cure known to man for it.
And that is what you were told.
That's right.
And yet, when you got home from the shrine, he had not been there. No one laid hands on him. It was just the power of God that healed your son.
That's right. It's a miracle.
That's right. All right, you're a scientist. You tried for days and days to try to analyze it. All right, how do you account for it now?
I just stand in awe, and I just thank God for what happened. There's no way one can explain this. You cannot explain God, the creator of the universe. It is impossible for man. His ways are not our ways.
And when it happens to your own son, it makes all the difference in the world, doesn't
That
it?
is right.
You never dreamed that a disease like this could come upon your son,
No.
and yet it did. What would you say to other parents when they feel, as you said a moment ago, you felt as though the rug had just been pulled from under you?
I think for some people, the only way is through this type of an experience. For us it was. This was the only way back for us to God.
That's right. And what it has done to you and your wife is even a far greater miracle than that which has happened to your son.
That is correct.
This is real. What we're talking about is as real as God himself. Do you understand? Nothing is hopeless with God, absolutely nothing. You may feel as though that condition is absolutely hopeless. Men and women only think that things are hopeless. Nothing is hopeless as long as God is still on his throne and still answers prayer. And it isn't a beautiful prayer that has to be prayed. It's that simple prayer. Oh, Simen, come. Stand by me. Here he is. Always remember him. The little boy with the freckles for whom God performed a miracle. And what God did for young Simen, he'll do for your child. He'll do for your son. He'll do for your daughter. God answers daddies and mamas and little boys' prayers.
Kathryn Kuhlman has presented another in the series of inspirational telecasts, I Believe in Miracles. Perhaps today's program has been the means of awakening your spiritual interest, but you have questions, problems needing experienced counsel. Miss Kuhlman would be happy to hear from you, pledging her individual attention. Simply write Kathryn Kuhlman, Post Office Box 3, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. All letters are treated in strict confidence. I Believe in Miracles comes to you each week at this same time under the auspices of the Kathryn Kuhlman Foundation. This is Art Gilmore speaking.